This is an odd first video in a series, but if you have been hurt or wounded or have been in a situation where religious power or control or where a church or an organization has deeply wounded you, I want to share some things that will help you get your voice and your power back. So I've seen some really interesting things in religious organizations from a very young age. I think some highlight reels include being starved a couple of times, watching certain things get swept under the rug a whole lot of times, and in the top highlights, I got kidnapped and held against my will once for 12 hours. That's actually now happened twice, in fact, and at this point, I can sort of laugh about it, but for a lot of years, I struggled with what had happened, and I did the right things, quote unquote. I reached out to the people that had been involved, and in certain scenarios even went to people that were in close ministerial proximity to people and said this is what happened, and nothing was ever done because people don't like taking responsibility or getting involved in messy situations. And so I deeply relate and deeply grieve with people that have found themselves in a similar situation. But for me, the healing process was super protracted for a few reasons. Aside from a lack of accountability, which is unfortunately super common, the people that were not inside the situation that were helping me walk out of it a lot of times would say things like, maybe you weren't really hearing God's voice, or you never would have gotten in that situation, or God never wanted you to be there, And that actually really compounded things and made them a lot worse because, I've heard God for a long time. That's one of the things I talk about online the most because I think it's one of the most important things that you can do with your life is to learn to be in relationship with God. And so I would go back really carefully. I'd go back through notes. I would go back mentally, rescan what had happened. And I would realize that, no, actually, I was right where God had asked me to be. And that was really complicated and hard to figure out and to deal with. And it was super difficult to figure out, what that even looked like. Because here were these people saying that I should never have been in these situations to begin with. But when I looked back, God had put me smack dab in the middle of some situations TM. And that was really hard to deal with. And this is where the message isn't going to apply to everyone that's been through a traumatic or difficult situation. But some of these situations I know that God led me through and walked me through for a couple of reasons. And I would like to share those with you because it might help. Now, this is definitely the difficult path. It's definitely the expensive path. It's definitely the not for everyone path. And if this is not for you, it's not for you. But if it is, I think it's going to be worth it. So I realized two things. One, that God was leading me through certain situations so that I would be able to see the damage and the control and the danger of situations that happen not just in churches, but in organizations, in governments, in other types of religious organizations, that there is a real pattern of control and manipulation. And because I walked through so many situations, those situations now bear in stark contrast to me that those things are not in the nature and character of God, and that there is a better way. And a lot of that looks like leaders relinquishing their control for God's control. But the second thing is really what the benefit of time and time spent with God has done for me. And as I have looked back on certain situations, my presence in the room, even my silent dissent to what was going on, changed those situations and actually prevented those situations from continuing with other people. And what do I mean by that, you asked? So what I mean by that is that these situations, because I walked in and said, no, actually that's not right, it did force people to either course correct or, in many cases, to limit the extent of the damage that they were doing in their broken state. And that was a powerful realization for me, because it flipped me from being in a victim mentality, saying that these things had happened to me, and realizing that in many cases I happened to the thing. And that's what it means to walk with God in and through a situation. Because you're walking with God, the situation will change. Now, some situations don't and won't change overnight, and you may never ever see the fruit of what it meant for you to be in a room or a situation at a certain time for a long time. But that doesn't change the fact that you and God in a room did change something. And so, because you were able to change something by being present in that space, that actually makes you an active participant with the Lord, not just a victim. And so I hope that that helps, because I look back and I've seen things that I was involved in after I was there and then left actually either course correct or be taken offline. And that's something that's not for everyone. It's not for every situation. In some situations, your power is taken from you, and reclaiming that is a process. But for some of you, you're going to look back with God and be like, and it may not be next year, it may be 5 or 10 years from now, but there will be fruit of walking not just around situations, but sometimes walking through situations with God. And so, if you're listening to this, I just believe that Jesus would say to you that He is giving your voice back, and He is offering you the power and authority that He gave you back, and that you are being invited into a story and a scenario where He isn't just inviting you to look back on what was, but to take what you learned and bring it into the future, and to build something with Him that lasts longer. And as for what happened to the people that hurt you, what is it to you? I still believe in, biblical accountability like we see in 1st and 2nd Timothy. I still believe in sitting down with your brother, as we see in the book of Matthew. But I also believe that sometimes we are privileged and honored to see a thing so that we can take it and write something better with Jesus. Hey there, I'm Mary. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button so I don't slip away. I have free Substacks with things written just like this video if you want to click onto that. I also teach online courses that go a little bit more in depth than a YouTube comment section will allow us to get into. And you can click to that. But if you've just enjoyed listening, I invite you to jump into our next video, which I think you're going to like just as much. So hit the next button.